Production of Kansas City Week in Review is made possible through the generous support of Dave and Jamie Cummings, Smithfield Foods, Haas and Wilkerson Insurance, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Coming up, labeled incompetent, why nearly every member of the Child Crimes Unit of the Kansas City Police Department has been suspended and reassigned. We know your TV screens are being inundated with political ads again. Can you believe what any of the candidates are telling you? We truth check some of the most blatant commercials hitting the airwaves. School funding back in the headlines in Kansas, and the head of KU announces she's stepping down. And he has properties everywhere. He even had designs on taking over a Kansas City casino. But why are the details of that failed deal still shrouded in secrecy? Hello, I'm Nick Haynes, and it's great to have you with us again, dissecting the week's stories in this place we call home. Mr. Up-to-Date, the host of Up-to-Date on KCUR-FM, Steve Kraske, star business and development reporter Steve Vockrodt from KCPT's Hale Center for Journalism, investigative reporter Mike McGrath, and star reporter, columnist, and blogger Dave Helling. Now this week, the Kansas City, Missouri City Council was set to cast a final vote on whether one of our metro's most luxurious hotels should be declared blighted. Owners of the Intercontinental Hotel on the Country Club Plaza say they need that designation so they can set up a community improvement district, allowing sales tax dollars to be collected to pay for hotel upgrades. But with supporters say they didn't have enough votes on the council, the issue was postponed for 2 weeks so they could get those votes lined up. So is that the way this works? You don't have to take no for an answer. You can delay council decisions until circumstances are more favorable to your cause, Steve Vockrodt.
Well, yeah, I mean, in a lot of cases that is how it works. And you know, in the same meeting, we saw the same thing happen when there weren't enough votes to support an incentive reform issue. Yeah, there's some, perhaps some behind-the-scene deal-making that goes on, or rehashing finer details about what the CID request is going to look like, what it's going to fund, or whether it even happens at all. But yeah, if you're somebody coming before City Council asking for something, it's kind of smart business sense if you don't really detect the support to go back and see what else you can do to
But even some City Council members saying this week, the real problem is, though, the public. They just simply don't understand what this is really about. What is it that the public doesn't understand, Steve Kraske?
Well, that the money raised here will be paid for by folks who stay at the hotel and not the public at large, Nick. That's the point that Catherine Shields and other members of the council think is being completely lost.
But one thing we've noted this week is that other hotels are now looking at this and saying, well, if they can do a community improvement district, Mike McGrath over at the Plaza, we can do it too. And I see that the Marriott Hotel downtown is also now looking to do a community improvement district exactly the same way. Can all hotels do this? Can any business do this?
Well, why not? It's like tips. If I get one, why shouldn't anybody have one? I mean, I think the word blight is the problem here. I mean, how can you blight something that's in the middle of the plaza?
So are the consequences of this far more than just saying, really, it's only the people at the hotel who will pay for this?
Well, I think that's the instant practical result of this consideration, Nick, if it is ever passed. But I think what you're seeing much more broadly is Kansas City has wrestled with the idea of tax incentives broadly for development for 30 years. What are the standards? What is blight? Excuse me, what isn't? How do we apply these rules fairly? And you do get a sense that the public is disenchanted with this entire process and believes that some people are favored over others and that it's unfair. And that's a tough vote for a member of the City Council to take. And so I think that's why there's this delay, which is not unusual for a project that is as controversial as this one.
I don't want people, though, to think that, there they go again in Kansas City, Missouri. They're all about these tax breaks, and it's all about businesses, and they can do what they like. Can we talk a little bit about another development elsewhere in our metropolitan area? And that's the Prairie Fire development, which is making the news in Johnson County this week. They're asking for a TIF money, which is the home of the Prairie Fire Museum, the Cinetopia, Pinstripes, going to the Overland Park City Council, looking for public subsidies to finance a second growth phase for the entertainment area. The news comes as it's revealed that the development is failing to meet sales tax projections, and the museum is not breaking even. Are Kansas City business owners then being unfairly blasted for asking for subsidies when the very same kind of help is being offered elsewhere in the metro, and in this case of Prairie Fire, to brand spanking new buildings, Steve?
Well, it's important to point out that Prairie Fire has not been approved for tax increment financing for this next phase. My sense is that the Overland Park City Council will scrutinize this pretty closely, given that the initial phases of Prairie Fire were subsidized, pretty handsomely, you could argue. And it's also worth pointing out that Overland Park has a pretty stringent TIF policy that evaluates how and where these projects should receive TIF. They tend to favor TIF projects that are in the northern part of the town, which is aging, rather than where this project is along 135th Street. And they also set limits on how much, what percentage of public financing should be part of the overall pro forma. They say that no more than 30% of the financing should come from public sources.
Steve.
Now, the tricky thing here, Nick, is developers, if they were sitting here, would point out that, hey, this argument has been going on in this city for 30 years. But folks, the community at large doesn't understand, they would say, what really is at play here. It's apples to bananas here to compare Prairie Fire with downtown Kansas City, where so much of the development focus has been for so many years. In downtown Kansas City, it costs more to build buildings. It costs more to build a parking lot. At Prairie Fire, there's lots of open land. That isn't the case downtown. And developers argue with some justification that, hey, it's more expensive for us to do what we do. We need TIF because it costs more here to do it. Now, the public maybe has had enough with all of this. That's a legitimate argument, but there is a counter on the other side as well.
Here's the problem. Steve's right, but here's the problem. If there was this week, Donald Trump, of all people, gave a speech somewhere on the campaign trail and said, in essence, I love to use other people's money. OPM is what we call it when we're covering this stuff. And that's what developers do. They always try to minimize their own exposure and maximize the exposure for other people's money. And the problem with what Steve just pointed out is once you give an incentive to one developer, every other developer wants the same thing. And they're paid handsomely to lobby public officials to get it. During the Mark Funkhauser administration, this entire thing dried up because Funkhauser, in essence, said, we're not giving it to anyone. Once you open the barn door, it's very, very difficult to get the horses back in, and I think that's what we're seeing across the metro area.
But in Kansas City, Missouri, they are trying to get those horses back in. The vote on the Intercontinental Hotel was just one of two big tax votes before the City Council this week. The second was on dialing back tax subsidies to developers. Did the Council make a decision on that, Steve Ockrott?
No, they didn't. The proponents of the measure to scale back incentives in certain circumstances, they didn't have enough votes. That occurred when Jermaine Reed, who's one of the co-sponsors of the legislation, he left the meeting, and I haven't gotten I don't know why he left or why he didn't come back or cast a vote, but if it was setting up to be a 6-6 tie without Jermaine Reed's presence, and 6-6 ties fail.
It could have simply been bad allergies, Steve.
Possibly. So it's going to be tabled for a couple weeks. We'll see what the effect is on the language of the ordinance in these next 2 weeks. There was a lot of last-minute opposition coming up from various parties. A couple labor organizations were voicing their concerns about it. Even though this thing's been out for 5 months, a lot of last-minute issues popping up.
But it's not like this is a draconian step, though, Mike McGrath. This is just cutting back by 25% the amount of money that developers can get from some of these larger public subsidies from the tax increment financing.
Yeah, Quentin Lucas's plan seems to be kind of generally accepted on the council, right?
Yeah, so the limiting of the cap or the caps on the redirections, people seem to be okay with that. It's some of the other details like the shared success fund, whether the taxing jurisdictions like the Kansas City Library, Kansas City Public Schools give their formal support rather than just sort of a written statement from the CEO.
I think Michael Collins on the Port Authority realized when they started giving these breaks along the light rail line, I think he realized just what a hot button issue this is, and I think he was surprised by the pushback he got. But that raises another issue about downtown, which is why give tax breaks to developers who are building along the light rail line where the value of that land should be going up anyway?
Absolutely. Yeah.
In other news this week, a police unit set up to investigate crimes against children, including rape and abuse, failed to properly investigate thousands of cases, with some detectives doing no work at all. That's according to internal police memos revealed this week in the Kansas City Star that describes gross negligence, incompetence, and efforts to cover up a problem that documents reveal were known to police commanders for at least 5 years. Never in my career with the KCPD have I seen such a systemic failure, writes a police major to a deputy chief in one memo. Nearly all of the 10-member Crimes Against Children unit was suspended from their jobs in April and reassigned to patrol work. But it's only this week, for the first time, do we get a portrait of what led to that unprecedented change. The Star revealed how cases of sexual abuse were so mishandled, many of them sat idle for months, with 50 idle for more than a year, including a report of a 4-year-old girl who had been raped and infected with a sexually transmitted disease. But in light of the story, what confidence can we now have that the police department is investigating crimes against children in a competent manner? Mike?
Obviously, the Chief Forte, only told a very small part of the story a few months ago. And this got me to thinking about the fact that if the city council had control over the police department, we might have heard about this before now. But, as you know, we have a police board appointed by the governor that includes 3 attorneys, who are two of whom at least are former prosecutors, which means they had a close relationship with the police department. And this raises the whole question to me as to whether we would have heard about this prior to now if the city council had control over the police department instead of the police board.
One of the big narratives around the country right now is the issue of police trust. What is this doing to police trust in Kansas City? And certainly, what is it doing to the reputation of the chief of police, despite what Mike says about the police board and who is in control of Chief Forte?
Well, it doesn't help matters on any level, Mike. This is as big a breakdown of internal operations at the PD that I've seen in my years in Kansas City. And I came here, I broke in covering the police department. This was a colossal meltdown. And to see this many people reassigned, it begins to speak to the problems inside the department here. You know, the chief, I think, can be faulted for not bringing this thing out sooner. The thing broke in April. He knew a lot more in April than we're just finding out now 5 months later in September. That's a problem. Having said that, he said he wanted time to investigate this thing. The investigation is ongoing, and that's why perhaps, we haven't seen the final conclusion of what this is going to be.
We had some of our viewers look at the story and are puzzled that the officers involved were not fired but reassigned. Yeah. Janet asks, does anyone think they'll actually do the job they were assigned and do it to the fullest? Steve?
I don't know. I mean, that's speculation. I don't know what the procedures are in a police department for terminating based on agreements with public safety unions and the police department. So, I don't know if these officers move on and do a better job wherever they got assigned. That remains to be seen.
The police department hates bad publicity. Hates it. And Dave Helling can talk about how much they hate it because of a story he did several years ago about some cars that were being housed at KCI, right?
In the middle of a budget crunch, they went out and bought 100 new police cars that would take them 5 or 6 years to put out on the street and park them all out at the airport. Let me just say that...
And you were taken to task.
Yes, they weren't happy. I would say that the relocated officers who used to be in child crimes will probably have someone watching their work very, very closely going forward. So I get the idea that they should be dismissed, but if they're reassigned, it's likely that someone's going to be paying a lot of attention to the work they do. But I'm fascinated by the idea that the victims of these crimes were not more vocal throughout the years, that I had this accusation, this happened to my daughter or my son, and they didn't step forward. I don't know why that would be. Are they afraid of police retaliation? Are they afraid their voices wouldn't be heard? I think we as reporters need to be a little more focused on listening to the voices of the community rather than just the police department going forward. And that may have been one of the things that contributed to this.
It seems to me if these victims came from powerful families, we would have heard it.
Precisely. And of course, crimes involving families are always shameful in a way, and it's hard for people to step forward. But the best check on police misbehavior is really the public, and that maybe didn't come to the fore until the end.
I think that's an excellent point. Having said that, the story pointed out that some of these families were calling the department over and over again, calling this unit saying, "Where's my case? What's happening?" And being told, "Hey, we're still working on it. We're still working on it." That just compounds the tragedy here.
Donald Trump is used to getting his own way in business. That in part explains how he's amassed a mammoth empire of casinos, golf courses, office complexes and luxury hotels. But at least in one place, it appears he couldn't win people over, and that was in Kansas City. In the late 90s, the New York billionaire made a bid to take over the struggling Hilton Flamingo Casino, now known as the Isle of Capri. But despite his claims he would turn it into the biggest and most exciting gaming mecca in town, he withdrew his application as the Missouri State Gaming Commission began investigating. What they were looking for and what they found that might have prompted Trump to withdraw his bid is still shrouded in mystery. For more than a month, Mike McGraw of the Hale Center for Journalism has been trying to get access to the documents that sit in the bowels of the Missouri State Gaming Commission in Jefferson City, but the public isn't allowed to see it. This is a license application from 17 years ago, so why the secrecy, Mike?
He withdrew his application, and under Missouri state law, if in a case where the application's withdrawn, the background investigation of him, which went on for about 8 months, stays in the bowels of the Gaming Commission.
Now, in your story, it says that there are more than 1,000 pages of documents in these files. What were you expecting to find, though, when you began this story?
I had no idea. That's why I wanted to see them.
Okay.
But we know from other cases that they go pretty deep into a business and try to determine whether that business is financially viable going forward.
Isn't it plausible, though, that Donald Trump simply just got fed up and frustrated with Kansas City and wanted to move on?
Quite possible. And there was another offer for the Flamingo. Trump had offered $15 million for a casino that was built a few years earlier for $100 million. They ended up selling the Flamingo to another buyer for about $22 million. But Trump had to know that during commission, one of the things I did get access to was thousands of pages of meetings by the Gaming Commission. And some of the commissions were starting to raise questions about whether Trump could really pull this off.
Okay. Now, this casino is the Isle of Capri today, which was recently named the lowest performing of the hotels in our Kansas City area. So how different it could have been, Dave Helling. This could have been huge.
Maybe. I mean, the casino south of the river has always struggled in Kansas City, going back to the beginning of gaming, which I think surprised a lot of people. That was the prized franchise back in the day. And for whatever reason, location or operation, it hasn't turned out to be that way. And I do think we forget sometimes how crazy the entire process was when gaming first came to Kansas City. The competing proposals, the semi-extortionate demands of elected leaders from the the operators of the casinos.
Bribes, prison time.
But here's why these documents might be important, Nick. There have been suggestions over many, many years that Donald Trump in New York has had too cozy relationships with organized crime figures, which is almost unavoidable in some ways when you're a developer in New York City. And if there was anything that preoccupied the Gaming Commission 20 or 25 years ago, it was the relationship between potential casino owners and organized crime. And so those documents might reveal whether investigators over 8 months found any of those links, could have proved any of those links, and that, of course, would have an impact on the presidential race if we could get our hands on it.
I did note, though, from a Kansas City Star article, which we were working for at the time, back in 1999 when this bid was coming up, from the head of the Chamber of Commerce in Gary, Indiana, that had started a Trump casino right there, saying the Trump organization has been an excellent corporate citizen. They're involved in many, many city and civic organizations. The casinos contribute hefty contributions to the city's coffers. Donald Trump has been a real shot in the arm.
What he didn't say is that the State Gaming Commission had fined the Trump Casino in Gary $24,000 for poor financial controls. One of the problems with the mob's involvement in casinos is they skimmed money off the top. And there was a bank bag that went missing at the Gary Casino with $54,000 in it. No one knows what happened to it, and it was poor financial controls from the company that supposedly led to that.
Steve.
Just an interesting side note to Mike's good story today in the newspaper that, lots of people, lots of groups are looking at the same thing Mike was. They wanted to see these documents given the stakes in the presidential race, including the Missouri Democratic Party.
We know your television screens are being inundated with political campaign commercials again. Can you believe what any of the candidates are telling you? This week we tooth check 2 pairs of ads, first in the race for U.S. Senate in Missouri and then in the state's race for governor. We begin in the race for the U.S. Senate, where Democrat Jason Kander's gun commercial is making national news and now prompting a barrage of ads in response.
I'm Jason Kander, and Senator Blunt has been attacking me on guns. Well, in the Army, I learned how to use and respect my rifle. In Afghanistan, I'd volunteer to be an extra gun in a convoy of unarmored SUVs. And in the state legislature, I supported Second Amendment rights. I also believe in background checks so that terrorists can't get their hands on one of these. I approve this message because I'd like to see Senator Blunt do this.
Some people can put together a gun blindfolded. Some do it really fast. Some really, really fast. Some do it upside down and blindfolded. But only one of these is a Hillary Clinton national campaign chairman. Only one received an F for his failure to defend the Second Amendment. Only one supports amnesty for illegal immigrants. When it comes to the U.S. Senate, Missouri voters know what's important.
I'm Roy Blunt, and I approve this message.
Now, you may have noticed that every other commercial break, it seems, features an ad now from Jason Kander or Roy Blunt. Does that tell us this race must be very close, Steve Kraske?
That's exactly what it tells you, Nick. And I love both these ads in some ways. The Kander ad is the ad of the campaign season. Everyone's talking about it. And what strikes me about it are the production values. Empty warehouse, every time he moves the gun or bangs it on the table, it echoes. It's a very effective spot. And I would also just add that the Blunt counter spot isn't bad either. Clearly, they had to respond quickly because that ad from Kander was pretty effective on a lot of metrics.
But why would Jason Kander, as a Democrat, want to play into the whole gun thing and make that such a big part of his campaign here when there are so many other issues that he needs to be tackling?
Well, first of all, Nick, guns seem to be the only issue in Missouri in every race this year. I mean, Eric Greitens blows things up in his early ads in the primary. As a political matter, it's an interesting question because I'm not sure that a lot of gun owners are going to vote for Jason Kander, even though he puts a gun together in his ad, because they're just not prone to support a Democrat. Well, I think part of it is rural. He wants to maintain some level of support in rural areas where guns are very important. And this is just my theory now, to the extent that this debate is about guns, it may help Kander in the sense that the other Blunt arguments that he's a liberal on economics or whatever never come up. It's all about guns. It isn't as if a lot of gun owners who support Roy Blunt are going to switch one way or the other. I'm not sure it's a good campaign strategy for Blunt even to respond to this rather than to move on to other critiques of Jason Kander. We'll see in November.
But is Blunt right, though, when he says that Jason Kander hasn't been friendly to guns in his record when he was in the legislature?
Well, it is true that the NRA has not given Jason Kander strong scores, and that's because, as Kander mentions in his ad, he has favored background checks before. That's anathema to the NRA.
Yeah, can I just, very quickly, Roy Blunt came to the rescue of the gun industry in the Senate after Sandy Hook. Because a lot of push after Sandy Hook for gun control in the Senate. He moved the discussion to mental health, was adamant about not even talking about the Second Amendment after Sandy Hook. And I think the NRA, which is spending more money in Missouri than any other state in the nation, is thanking Roy Blunt for that.
Well, guns have also become a big issue in the race for Missouri governor, which features a Republican candidate who sets off explosions from his gun in his campaign ad, and a Democrat who supported a bill removing permit and training on Missourians wanting to carry a concealed weapon. But it's the past actions of the Republican candidate that is the source of the latest spat in the race.
Remember the charity Eric Greitens started? Well, IRS records show he took contributions intended for veterans to pay himself over $700,000 in salary and bonuses, and spent another $600,000 of the charity's money on image consultants. More money Eric diverted from veterans used to promote Eric. If Greitens can't be trusted with a charity's money, is he really ready to be governor?
Chris Koster's attacks on Eric Greitens are total crap. A load of hogwash. Total bull.
So they're scared and they're making up lies because they have nothing else.
Eric Greitens donated his combat pay to start The Mission Continues.
He refused a salary for 2 years.
And he slept on an air mattress to get it started.
Today, The Mission Continues helps thousands of veterans find jobs.
Eric Greitens served his country.
He served our veterans.
I know.
I know.
Because I was one of them.
I know because I was one of them.
So did Greitens divert, as the ad claims, $700,000 from a veterans charity that he founded to pay himself? Or is this hogwash, as Eric Greitens' supporters claim, Dave?
It's not diversion, Nick. That's a pejorative. He took a salary. I've looked at the tax returns. When you have a nonprofit charity, as The Mission Continues was, their tax returns are online and you can actually look at what they pay people. And he did take a salary of 6 figures until I think last year it was down to $50,000. I don't have the documents in front of me. So he did take a salary. So it's not total hogwash, you know, in the response ad. He didn't take a salary for 2 years, but he did take one for several years. Now, there's nothing improper about that. It's disclosed. It was his charity. Voters can decide whether or not, you know, he took an excessive salary because it's online, but it isn't illegal, improper. He wasn't trying to hide anything.
Okay, before we end the show, I want to swiftly get into some Kansas issues. Yes, we do have another side of our state line. Over in Kansas, the question of school funding was back in the headlines as attorneys on both sides of the school finance debate appeared before the Kansas Supreme Court, the 7 justices deciding whether or not the state schools are adequately funded. The justices told it could take between $430 million and $1.4 billion more dollars a year to properly fund classroom. Contention dismissed by attorneys for the state. But if that were the case, wouldn't that basically bankrupt the state, Steve?
Well, it could, unless the state then is forced to raise taxes or cut other things to get this job done and pay for these programs, Nick. This is a mega issue facing lawmakers come next year.
And could this be the explanation as to why also, with all these budget problems, why the KU chancellor is stepping down this week, Steve Vonkrot? She's announcing, Bernadette Gray-Little, that she's leaving after 7 years on the job.
Well, the higher education, I mean, what we are talking about with the Supreme Court is different funding mechanism than higher education. You can't help but wonder, though, however, the exodus of some of these high-ranking officials with public universities in Kansas, what that means and what that portends to the climate and the environment that they work in the state of Kansas, which, you know, they might reasonably argue is hostile to funding for higher education.
State support for per pupil support for students in higher education in Kansas, Nick, cut $1,500 during her tenure. Last year, Brownback came to her and said, I need $10 million out of your budget mid-year. That's tough stuff for any chancellor to try to oversee.
And that is our Week in Review. Our thanks to our news reviewers. I'm Nick Haynes. From all of us at KCPT, thanks for spending part of your weekend with us.